2022 Formula One season is right around the corner, so I thought, why not embarrass myself and post all my predictions for all to see on the internet? In this video, I'm going to go over my predictions for the Constructors Standings, the Drivers Standings, and then give you 3 spicy hot takes that I think might happen during the year. First up, we have the Constructors Standings, and in 10th place, I have Williams. The biggest reason I have Williams in 10th is that I'm very worried about their financial situation and how much that might have distracted from their ability to develop a good car for 2022. I'm also worried with their driver lineup, which I'll get into a little bit more later, but I just think it's going to take Alex a little bit of time to get used to the car, and I just don't really trust Latifi. And I think they will get some points, but together not enough to beat the other teams. In 9th, I have Haas, and I seem to have a little bit more trust in them than other people do. I just think that with the amount of time that they spent developing the car, that they will be able to do much better than they did last year. If not, oh boy, that could get spicy. But I generally trust that Schumacher will be able to do well, and I think he will get the most out of the car, and he tends to do better in his second year as well. I have zero faith in Mazepin. Maybe he won't get points. I don't know. Maybe he will. Who knows with how crazy some of these races might get. But I think Schumacher will carry the team, and I think Haas will manage to squeak into 9th. In 8th place, I have Alfa Romeo. And I think that it might be possible that they will have the slowest car of the year. But I think Bottas will be able to get the most out of that car, and I think he will qualify well and probably fall back in the races, kind of like they did last year. In 7th, I have Aston Martin, and I think this partially comes from my worry about what's been going on behind the scenes with the team, with Otmar leaving and just the restructuring of things, the fact that they haven't quite got their factory up and running yet and all the infrastructure's ready to go. I just worry that they're a little bit behind in terms of development and their ability to develop the car. So maybe they'll get better throughout the year, but I think they're going to start off kind of rough. Yeah, I just don't have a lot of faith in where they're at right now. In 6th, I have Alpha Tauri, and I worry for the Red Bull cars a little bit this year. I know that Honda is staying on now, I think. I'm still confused about that whole situation with Red Bull powertrains, and is Honda taking over? Is it doing a transition? Like, what's going on there? But I just think that AlphaTauri always does worse than Red Bull. Always, every year. And I think this is just about where they're going to fit in any year, really. I don't know how much they could ever do much higher than this. I hope they could prove me wrong. And with Gasly, you never know. But I just think that they are a perennial midfield team. In 5th, I have Alpine. And unfortunately, this means that L-Plan might not have gone fully to plan. My biggest worry with them, kind of similar to Aston Martin, is the restructuring of management behind the scenes. The things that Alain Prost said on his way out the door is a little bit worrying, and I think if everything is coming down from the top in a dictatorial way, that worries me, because there isn't a diversity of opinions, and sometimes that can lead to not as much creativity or not as good of a car. Like, I just think that just worries me, and I hope that they can do well despite all that. And I love Alonso and Ocon. I think they're one of the most wholesome driver pairs on the grid. But I just worry that these things that are happening behind the scenes kind of hints at something that's not quite right there, and a little bit of red flags, pardon the pun. Now the top 4, I think, are all going to be quite close, barring that these regulations have worked the way they're intended to. But in 4th, I have McLaren. And I think my biggest reason for this is, again, just that they haven't got their infrastructure quite up and running yet. And they're still kind of on the upward trend. They haven't hit their peak yet, which is good. But I think they're still working towards that. And I just sense that I think it's going to be another year or 2 before they're fully ready to compete for a championship. Now in 3rd, I have Red Bull. And I think the biggest reason for this is that they went all in 2021. And I mean, it seems like every team didn't cut their development off of that car quite early on in the year, but I think Red Bull, with the amount of time that they had to focus on that championship run, would have had to have taken some out of their 2022 focus. So I just think that it's going to impact them at the start at least, and it might take them a little while to get caught up to everyone else, and so I think that's going to impact them on the final standings. Okay, top 2. In 2nd, I have Mercedes, and I think similar to Red Bull, I think their competition last year might have impacted their ability to develop the 2022 car. I also worry that with everything that happened in Abu Dhabi last year, that might have also kind of caused a little bit of a distraction to their ability to develop the car. But you can never count Mercedes out. They know how to deal with regulation changes and make a good car. And so I still think they're going to come 2nd, but I think they're just going to lose out a little bit to my number 1 team, which is Ferrari. And Ferrari, maybe this is a bit optimistic, but I think that they're going to be able to get their car to where it needs to be, and I think that they have the strongest driver lineup in the grid, and I think that is going to be the biggest reason why they win. I think, like I said, I think the top 4 teams are all going to be quite close, but I just think that Leclerc and Sainz have the ability to get the most out of that Ferrari and be consistent with it. And I think that might be a big thing too, is the ability to be consistent. So that's my top 10 for the constructors, and let's move on to the drivers. In last place, I have Guan Yu Zhou. And I think the biggest reason for this is just he's the only rookie, and it's going to take him a while to get used to being an F1, used to being in the Alfa Romeo team. And I have more faith in him as a driver than I do Mazepin, but I just think that with the adjustments and seeing last year how hard it was for rookies to get acclimatized to the grid, I feel like he's going to finish last, unfortunately. In 19th, I have Mazepin, and doesn't really need to be too much of an explanation for this. He was just god-awful last year, and I think he's going to do a little bit better as long as the Haas is a bit easier to drive, and he might get points. I think he might get 1 or 2 if he manages to capitalize if there's a crazy race, but I just don't have faith in him as a driver at all. In 18th, I have Latifi, and I just think that the Williams isn't going to be a very good car, and I just don't really have faith in Latifi as a driver. I think he will get points again. It's kind of similar to Mazepin, that he'll be able to capitalize if there's a chaotic race, but I just don't have faith in that Williams car. In 17th, I have Albon, and I think he's going to score a little bit more points than Latifi, but again, that Williams car, I just don't have any faith in it. And I really hope that he proves me wrong, but between the 4 of these drivers, I don't think they're going to have very many points between them. Okay, here's my first hot take. I don't really know why I did this. I I don't know, just a gut feeling, but I have Lance Stroll in 16th. You never know what could happen with this grid. You don't know how the cars are gonna go. I don't know. This is just a shot in the dark. Honestly, I have no explanation for having Stroll this low. Anyways, moving on. In 15th, I have Schumacher, and I think that he is going to be able to get a lot out of the Haas car, and I think he's going to have some strong qualifying sessions, maybe get into Q3 a few times, and I think he's going to get into the points several times next year. I have a little bit more faith in the Haas car this year, and I hope that he is able to do a good job. In 14th, I have Valtteri Bottas. I just think that in Lewis's shadow, we were all very critical of him because he couldn't live up to Lewis. Like, no one can beat Lewis. And I think going to Alfa Romeo is going to be a really good situation for him. He's going to have a lot less pressure, and we saw at the end of last year that once he had signed this contract with Alfa Romeo and kind of knew what his driver position was going to be like, he started performing way better. And I just think that once he does get used to the Alfa Romeo car, I think he's going to do quite well and be able to get the most out of the car. And I think that's going to show in him finishing quite high, at least out of the backmarkers. And in 13th, I have Sebastian Vettel. I really hope that I'm wrong here. I love Seb. I just want him to do well. He's such a good advocate for all of the social issues and climate change and just a great human being, and I just don't think that Aston Martin is ready to have a competitive car, and I think that 13th is about around where he can finish. Now in 12th, I have Yuki Sonoda. I think that this is going to be Sonoda's breakout season. I think he's going to do much better than he did last year. I think the results that he was starting to see at the end of last year kind of shows that, and a lot of that I think was Alex Albon's mentorship, which won't continue this year, so we'll see how that goes for Yuki, but I just think he's used to the car now. He has a much better understanding of things and also knows how to temper his speed and kind of when to go for it, when not to, and he seemed to start to be getting a hang of that at the end of last year, and I think that's just going to continue over into 2022. In 11th, I have Esteban Ocon, and I think that without his win last year, he would have finished lower on the grid than he did, and I just don't feel like he's going to be able to get a win in 2022. Maybe a podium, but I just don't think that the Alpine is quite ready to be competing for race wins on a regular basis without chaos. So I think this is about where I see Alpine finishing. In 10th, I have Pierre Gasly. And Gasly, I just have so much faith in him as a driver. He's proven time and time again that he is able to get a lot out of that Alfa Tauri car. And I think he'll drop off a little bit from last year just because I don't think that the Red Bull cars are going to be as fast as they were the year before. I have more faith in Gasly as a driver than I do as AlphaTauri as a team. In 9th, I have Fernando Alonso, and I just think that now that he's accustomed to Alpine, he's gonna get the most out of that car in every single race, and he is such a good defensive driver, such a good driver all around, really. And I think that he's going to be the best of the rest because I think the top 4 teams are all going to be quite close. In 8th, I have Daniel Ricardo once again. I have a lot of faith that Daniel's going to do much better this year than he did last year. I think the car will be a little bit more suited for him, and he's going to be closer to Lando than he was, but I just think that the team is probably going to favor Lando in a lot of their strategy decisions, at least to start the year, and if that continues throughout the year, it's just going to bump Daniel down a little bit. And also, I just have McLaren finishing in that fourth spot, being a little bit behind the other three teams. So I think this is just about around where he's going to finish. In seventh, I have Sergio Perez. And the biggest reason for this is, I think, similar to last year, they're going to sacrifice him quite a bit on behalf of Max. And I also just think that he just doesn't qualify quite as well as some of the other drivers at the top of the grid, and I think that's going to cause him to suffer a little bit in the races. And the Red Bull car is going to be behind a bit at the start of the year, and I think that's also going to impact how high up on the rankings he can get. In sixth, I have Lando Norris. And Lando, I think he's going to outperform Daniel again. And I think he's going to get the benefit for strategy, and I really hope he gets his first race win. And I think sixth is about where he can finish if the other three teams don't underperform. Alright, here's where things get a little bit spicy. I have George Russell in fifth. I think George is a fantastic qualifier. He's proven that time and time again with Williams, Mr. Saturday, and that performance in Spa last year was unbelievable. I worry about his racecraft. We've seen a little bit last year that he tends to fall back a bit in the races, and I think that being at the back for the past few years, he might be a little bit out of practice in terms of battling with the top drivers at the front of the grid. So I think it's going to take him a little while to get used to the Mercedes. I know he was able to top right in at the Secure Grand Prix and do spectacularly his first race there, but I think this is just a different year, and he's going to have to be fully integrated into that team. And I just worry a little bit that the time that it takes him to kind of get used to the car is going to impact his ability to finish high up. And the top four drivers will all probably be able to hit the ground running a little bit better than Russell. In fourth place, I have Carlos Sainz. Carlos has shown that he can be an incredibly consistent driver, and he was the only driver last year to be able to finish every single race. And I think this is going to be a huge asset this year with the cars all being, I'm thinking, quite tightly packed, and a lot of movement in terms of which cars is going to be the fastest throughout the year. And I think if he's able to be consistent and consistently get points, I think that's going to keep him near the top of the list. My only worry with him is that his qualifying isn't quite as good as his teammates. And a lot of people have Carlos finishing ahead of Charles, but I just think that last year Charles got unbelievably unlucky, and I think over the course of a season, if their luck is equal, I think Charles gets the edge. In third place, I have Max. And I just don't see how Max can finish any lower than third. But I think that the Red Bull is going to be worse in 2022 than it was in 2021. So I think this is about the maximum that he will be able to achieve. Of course, knowing Max, he could prove me wrong. He's a fantastic driver. But I just have less faith in that Red Bull, especially off the bat, for getting up to speed with the other cars based on their, what I think they'll be a little bit slow in getting started for the year, and I think that'll impact Max's ability to win the championship. In second place, I have Charles Leclerc. And I just think that that Ferrari car is going to be really, really good. I'm really hoping that it's good. And I just think Charles is going to do extremely well. He's proven to be a very capable driver when given the car. My only worry with him is that this is going to be his first championship fight. And while Max was able to seal the victory, I worry about Charles' ability to get it done, especially when my number one pick and my pick for Drivers' Champion next year is Lewis Hamilton, because I think Lewis is going to come back with an absolute vengeance, and he's going to want to stick it to everyone who took that 2021 championship away from him. He's going to want to stick it to the FIA. He's going to want to destroy all the other drivers, and I just think he is going to come back with a level of focus that we haven't seen in him since 2017, when he came back after losing to Rosberg. And I hope that he can do this. I have a lot of faith in him as a driver, and until we see him drop off, I will not believe that he will drop off. I think he will always be a favorite to win, and I just think that he's just the odds-on favorite any year until he retires. Last up, I have 3 spicy hot takes for things that I think are going to happen this year. My first hot take is that we are going to have 3 new race winners in 2022. My prediction for this is going to be Carlos, Lando, and George, but who knows, we might have something completely wild happen, and maybe we get like a Sonoda victory or a Lance Stroll victory. Like, that would completely blow up my driver's predictions, but I just think that there's going to be a lot of mixture in terms of how the cars do, especially at the start of the year, and a lot of opportunity for these younger drivers to steal a race win. So I'm hoping that this one is right. My second spicy hot take, and this kind of goes into why I have Charles losing the championship, is I think that the Ferraris are going to collide this year. I just get the sense that Carlos and Charles both being so capable, things have the potential to get a bit tense and spicy in the Ferrari garage. I don't have a huge amount of trust in their ability to manage their drivers, especially after 2019 and 2020. I don't know. I just have a feeling that things are going to get really tense there, and it's going to get a little dramatic and spicy, and I think they're going to collide, and it might cost them the drivers, which would be really unfortunate. And my third hot take. This one's my spiciest. I don't know. I think it'll be funny if this happens, but ooh, I think it has potential, honestly, but I think that Max Verstappen is going to face a race ban. Max has 7 penalty points currently on his license, and you need 12 for a race ban. But these points are on his license until September, which means he's going to have to get through over half of the season before he loses any of these penalty points off his license. And all it takes is accidentally missing 1 yellow flag, or cutting a chicane, or doing one of his dive bombs that he did against Lewis last year. I think he might, with the regulations hopefully taking care of that, maybe this will be less likely to happen, but I just fear that he is going to continue to be the aggressive driver that he is, and it might get him into trouble. So I think this is quite spicy, but I think it's possible that this might happen. And oh boy, if that does, that'll be... I'm excited. I'm really excited for this season. That's it for this one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're interested in following along with some of the other content I have planned for this 2022 Formula One season. And also leave a comment below with your spicy hot takes. I'm interested to see what everyone else kind of thinks is going to happen this year. Anyways, thanks for listening, and see you around.